Thank you. I want to follow up on a couple things. It would be helpful to me to hear through you, Mayor Simmons, from the staff, there have been some of the advantages of us having this timeline that was sent to, I think, the whole city and the council from Jason Alves. And what he mentioned was that, in his opinion, in the working group, led to better, more inclusive outcomes, that focusing on segments has allowed them to be more intensive on those segments, including one of the things we know, which is, I think, a separate question I will ask, is that the intersections need to be paid attention to, since that's where crashes happen and that's where the two deaths happened. And that also that the extra time allowed for funding for improvements in the design in the front of King Open and the Cambridge Street Upper School, that actually already had a separated bike lane. So it's a little concerning that money that was spent on a bike lane, a totally separated bike lane, is now going to be improved, which is good. But again, it's a sign that if you don't take the time to do the planning up front and perhaps have the time to do it, could you just comment a little bit about did that funding allow funding for improvements in the design? And also, my understanding is part of this is coming out of the Cambridge Street Working Group, and that was a council order from 2021, but it was only convened in mid of 2024. So that's the group that has been working on this. That was delayed a couple years, and so now it's in full process and it's been working on this. So could you just comment on that funding issue for the King Open bike lanes and the idea of focusing on segments?
And Councillor Nolan, who you would like to hear from? Commissioner McKenna?
Or who's ever been working on this or wants to respond to it. I believe the email was sent to the council as well as Commissioner McKenna, City Manager Huang, and DCMO Reardon.
Commissioner?
Through you, Madam Mayor. We are just convening the Cambridge Street Working Group now. I am very confident that working groups are a very effective way of working, but on all of our projects, including the initial outreach that we've done on Cambridge Street, we do a tremendous amount of outreach, both with the public and specifically with businesses. So a working group is another tool in the toolbox, and it does help. And it will be in place for the remainder of the work that we do on Cambridge Street, and that is true regardless of what the timeline is. I think that the question about the King Open block is a lot of time went into the planning of that, and it was a very innovative design that was trying to meet a lot of different needs in that space. And I think it has not worked out the way we hoped that it would, and I think that the funding is an earmark from Representative Presley, and we're very excited to be able to use it in her district to really put in a very high quality facility. There's been a lot of advancements in how the public understands separated bike lanes since we were designing the King Open School, and it's going to be a much better facility when we're done. So we're very excited to have that opportunity to fully fund that and to work through MassDOT to do that work.
Councilor Nolan?
Thank you. And could all of the city staff or DCM Reardon or DPW and Commissioner refer to this question of what I heard at the last meeting, which is why I voted for it, is that, yes, we can get it done. We heard today we can get this done 2026 or 2027, and there's pros and cons to both, and there's advantages and disadvantages. So could we hear a little bit about what it is that could be, and again, I am with everyone who knows this. This is an extension of the final deadline. Anything that can be done earlier could be done earlier. But I'm just interested in struggling with this to hear. I did hear that there's pros and cons. It's up to us to decide. I understand that. However, there are advantages and reasons for doing it one or the other. So if the staff could address that, that would be helpful to me.
Councilor Nolan wants to hear from the staff on this. We'd like to start with you, Mr. Reardon, and we'll work our way down.
Thank you, Mayor Simmons. Councillor Nolan, I think we made mention of these trade-offs when we spoke in April. Obviously, given the significant feedback that councillors and staff have gotten from businesses and residents in the community, there's an impact on them as a result of the loss in parking. And we're all very conscious of that. And so if we move that a little bit faster, there's a more significant immediate impact on them, and there's less time for them to be able to adjust. And so that's something that people have to bear in mind. At the same time, if you have I think we all agree, if you have a protected bike lane on a given street, it affords cyclists more protection. And so for that period of time, when that protected bike lane is not on that street, they're not as protected as they would be otherwise. And so this is the really challenging situation that you have in front of you. There is more disruption in terms of loss of parking immediately, if indeed we do it faster. But at the same time, there's a greater risk to cyclists if you don't do it as fast. And so it's a real struggle, and I totally appreciate the fact that it's a very difficult decision for city councillors to make, but I don't know if I can put it any better than that for you.
City Manager.
Through you, Mayor Simmons, I would echo a lot of the way that Deputy City Manager O'Riordan has framed this. That was the conversation we were having in April to say, on the one hand, we are looking at establishing safer bike infrastructure. The faster we put that in place, the more protection we're providing to cyclists. At the same time, there have been, and we've seen, a lot of disruption, especially for businesses, restaurants, the loss of parking on street, and the speed with which we are moving forward with bike lanes also has an impact on those establishments. What I've appreciated in this conversation is I do feel like both sides are hearing each other, and there is a value to say, on both sides, we want there to be safety for our cyclists. We want our restaurants to be able to succeed. We're willing to figure out how we can find additional parking. And I think a lot of the work has been trying to find these more creative ways to accommodate and to find some consensus. But as Deputy City Manager O'Riordan is noting, at some point there is still a trade-off to be made. How fast do we want to go? Where do we want to set the deadline? And I think that is where we do look to the council for how do we make some of those really difficult trade-offs when we have different parts of our community who may value things slightly differently or draw the line in different places. I think these are both feasible deadlines, whether we're talking about November 2026 or November 2027, from an engineering perspective, from a community engagement perspective. I think the challenge is often just how we try to communicate with all of our different stakeholders to be able to say, we have really listened, this is how we came to this decision. And then I think we're really happy to move forward with that. But I've appreciated the conversation, even though it's been really difficult.
Ms. McKenna.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think that Deputy City Manager and City Manager have really laid it out well. I think that there are challenges, and many people appreciate a slower rollout, and at the same time there is the trade-off around the faster that we can make our corridors safer, the better. So I think it's a very difficult decision, and it's a difficult set of trade-offs, certainly.
Deputy City Manager.
Nothing to
Councillor
add.
Toner, back to you.
I was actually Councillor Nolan.
Thank you. Councillor Nolan, back to you.
Thank you. That is helpful. I recognize that. And again, it's all about what the end point is, not if it can get done sooner. The other question I had, given the trauma of the last few months, we have had 2 deaths on our streets that were referenced often in public comment. We all felt them very deeply. Both of them were on streets with already protected bike lanes. They happened in intersections with trucks. We then rallied and said and put to the staff, we need to really look at our intersections. They are dangerous. We know that. We've been doing everything we can for trucks, but we do control some of the infrastructure at our intersections. There's lots of ways that other cities have addressed it. That is a new level of work that we have put on and asked the city to take on. So my question is, how does that interface with, while we have phenomenal staff and we're moving forward and we can get this done, we have also said we also want all these dangerous intersections to be reviewed. Some of it might be quick build, but we might want, some of the quick build doesn't protect you as much as hard build. So we really have said, and the staff has said, they're looking at prioritizing the most dangerous intersections. Some of them will involve construction. So I'm curious as how that effort intersects with this and how we can be assured that as we move forward, because that's safety also, that the more that we can do in those intersections, the more likelihood that there's safety. And so that's also part of the trade-off, because we also know we can't do everything at once.
Are you yielding the floor?
Well, I think the question is how are those efforts moving forward? How is it that, because for me, I would think, given the burden on staff, we just threw a whole nother very related but incredibly important piece of work related to safety on the same staff that is moving forward with a very extensive work on the bike lanes, which I supported from the beginning, and I supported the idea of having an extension because I wanted it to be done better, to make sure we really had the time to do it. If it could be finished sooner, fine, but things happen. We know that there are often delays that happen, and we want to make sure that we're doing things as fast as possible, and yet recognizing this intersection work is a whole new piece of work. So I want to understand how that fits in with this.
Councillor Nolan wants to know how this fits together, so who would like to take that?
I'll take. Through you, Madam Mayor. We are one group of people with finite resources, so I can't say that there is no kind of interaction between the amount of effort in those two kind of separate but very connected work efforts. But what I would say is that I think that there is a lot of overlap on the two. This is hard to say when we're, just after 2 fatalities at locations where we had separated bike lanes, but the work that we do for the bike lane corridor does improve safety at intersections. Not as much as we would like, and I think that as we do these designs, there will be overlap with the high priority intersections as well, and we can kind of really utilize that analysis that's going on in one project to inform the other. So there's a lot of collaboration between the two work efforts that will happen there. And I think that as we identify opportunities as part of the corridor work, we can do a quick build version and then come back if it's called for to do more capital work later. The other thing I would say is that we're going to be doing a lot of analysis around the intersections, but we know that with the quick build separated bike lanes, we have a really effective tool for the rest of the corridor that we know will make a huge safety improvement. We've heard so many stories of dooring tonight, and we know that is something that is more or less eliminated when we put in the separated bike lanes. So I think that there's a lot of overlap in the two works, and that we can do both work streams. But it's not to say that there's no impact.
Councillor Nolan yielding.